Marriage is said to be a sacred bond between two people and two families. Marriage is often seen as the ultimate form of commitment and love. But above these romantic notions is the reality that marriage is a legal relationship that requires documents and certification. So, while the whole country is being pulled in different directions on the question of love jihad and anti-conversion laws, it makes sense to stop for a moment and wonder, what does Indian law say about marriage in the first place? Before we get into the finer details of what Indian law says about marriage, let us understand one important thing. Marriages need to be registered. People often have a religious ceremony and leave it at that, but there are many benefits to registering a marriage and obtaining a marriage certificate. A marriage certificate is official proof of a marriage having taken place between two parties. This is required for all official purposes like getting a passport and visa. In fact, a marriage certificate is required as proof in a court of law for many cases, including claiming a dead spouse's insurance or savings if they have died without naming a nominee, claiming income tax benefits, separation or divorce and children's custody, to prove that a person is not already married. This can prevent cases of marriage fraud like NRI sham marriages. India is home to followers of several religions, and so the legal system has come up with marriage laws for every major community. Some things are common to all these. The bride should be at least 18 and the groom should be at least 21 years old. Both parties should have consented to the marriage while of sound mind, and consent cannot be obtained through any kind of force. As for religion-specific laws, let's begin with the Hindu Marriage Act. This act requires the bride and groom to be unmarried to anyone else at the time of registering the marriage, and that they are not related to each other. This is done by tracing their ancestry back up to 5 generations and ensuring there is no common ancestor. To register a marriage between two Hindus, the applicants should fill a form and get 3 witnesses to sign it, pay a fee, submit the wedding invitation card, a photograph of the ceremony showing bride and groom clearly, copies of their SSC certificates or passport, and have 3 witnesses to sign in the register of the registrar's office. Though Jains and Buddhists are considered separate religious groups, they have no separate marriage laws. Hindu marriage law applies to members of these communities. However, Sikhs and Zoroastrians have separate acts governing marriages between members of these communities. Next up is marriage among Muslims, which is regulated by the Muslim Personal Law Application Act. This is in accordance with the Sharia, and so marriages are conducted after a formal proposal goes from one party to another and is accepted by the latter. To register a Muslim marriage, the parties involved should provide details of the location of the wedding, these details about the groom, these details about the bride, these details about the nikah khan or person who performs the wedding, details of dower or meher, and a witness's signature and details. Then comes the Indian Christian Marriage Act, which requires marriage between Christians to be solemnized by a priest or clergyman. Like with Hindu marriage, the bride and groom must be unmarried at the time of the wedding. At least 2 witnesses and a licensed registrar are required to make the marriage official. The laws we have spoken about until now are applicable when 2 people following the same religion decide to get married. But what if a Hindu and a Christian want to marry each other? This is where the Special Marriage Act comes in. This act allows people following different religions to be lawfully wedded in India. And just like the other marriage laws, the bride and groom must have consented to the union, must meet age requirements, and should not be related to each other. But the procedure to be followed by couples wishing to register under the Special Marriage Act is more complicated than for same religion couples. A couple wishing to register under the Special Marriage Act must first give a written notice to a marriage officer stating their intention to marry. The marriage officer enters the notice in their records and puts it up on display in their office for a minimum of 30 days. Here's the tricky part. Anyone can request access to these records and raise an objection on the marriage between the couple. It is only after several rounds of declarations by the parties involved and witnesses that a marriage under this act is said to be official. Yes, it's true what they say. Love is complicated. But in a country like India, which is so deeply divided along caste and religious lines, interfaith couples already have little to no support. The Special Marriage Act has been criticized for making interfaith unions more complicated with the 30-day notice period and the provision for outsiders to raise objections. In fact, a 2018 Law Commission report cites these rules in the Special Marriage Act as the reason for some interfaith couples to choose religious conversion. Because if either partner converts to the other's religion, they can register the marriage under the specific law of that community, which is simpler than opting for the tedious process of the Special Marriage Act. But such conversions have come under scrutiny in recent times. States like Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh have come up with new laws to curb religious conversions in the name of marriage. All this finds its root in the complicated procedures outlined in the Special Marriage Act. Keeping this in mind, the Allahabad High Court ruled in January 2021 that publishing a notice and inviting objections are not mandatory for couples who choose to register their wedding under the Special Marriage Act. The court ruled that these conditions infringe on the couple's right to privacy. We're not here to pass judgment on which law is good and which is bad vis-a-vis Indian marriages. But we will reiterate that the registration of marriage is important and that you should not just have a ceremony and call it a day. Share this video so that people know why they shouldn't miss this step, and thank you for watching.
Subscribe to Factly and hit the bell icon for updates.